Erin Burnett Outfront, next on CNN.
Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett, and out front tonight we have breaking news. President Biden is about to speak this hour. He will hold a rare primetime address to announce the United States has taken out one of the world's most wanted terrorists, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the leader of al-Qaeda, a man who oversaw the September 11th attacks alongside the group's founder, Osama bin Laden. Now, Zawahiri had been on the FBI's most wanted list for almost 25 years. Now, according to a spokesperson for the Taliban, which of course controls Afghanistan now, he was killed while at a residential house in the Sherpur area of Kabul. Not in tribal regions, in the hinterlands. He was in the capital of Afghanistan. Now, he founded the terror movement al-Qaeda while in an Egyptian jail. He spent time in the United States. And in 2021, released a video to celebrate America's withdrawal from Afghanistan. People have been saying he was dead, but here he is. In this video, he is heard saying, quote, "Let us not forget that 19 mujahideen, the warriors of Islam, stabbed America in its heart, an injury the like of which America had ever tasted before. And today it is making its exit from Afghanistan, broken, defeated after 20 years of war." That is proof. Zawahiri did not stop after 9/11. In the years that followed, he continued to lead al-Qaeda. He has continued to heap praise on terrorists who target Americans. He praised a second lieutenant in the Saudi Royal Air Force who shot and killed 3 U.S. Navy sailors at Naval Air Station Pensacola just in 2019. According to Zawahiri's FBI wanted poster, the reward for the most wanted terrorists was up to $25 million. Now, there are so many things we do not yet know tonight. So many details about how they found out where he was, how they targeted, how they knew they got him. But we do know 25 years on the list, $25 million, they say the reward. Jeremy Diamond is out front live at the White House to begin our breaking news coverage. And Jeremy, obviously the president is going to be speaking in just a few moments here live to the country. Tell me about the significance of this moment and what we're about to hear. I know they have obviously been working on this with painstaking detail.
Yeah, this is an extremely significant moment for President Biden during his time as president. As soon as we learned that President Biden was going to address a significant counterterrorism operation in Afghanistan, immediately it was clear that this must have been a high-value target. That is typically only when we do hear from the President of the United States addressing one of these counterterrorism operations. The last time we heard from President Biden in a similar moment was back in February when the leader of ISIS at the time, al-Qurayshi, was killed in a U.S. raid in Syria. Now, U.S. officials have yet to officially confirm here from the White House that the target was indeed al-Zawahiri, but we do have several sources at CNN confirming to us that al-Zawahiri was killed in a drone strike over the weekend. A senior administration official merely saying that the U.S. conducted a successful counterterrorism operation over the weekend in Afghanistan. And as you mentioned, Erin, the Taliban say that this drone strike happened inside of Kabul, in downtown Kabul. And of course, that raises a whole host of questions. The Taliban had agreed as part of that agreement with the Trump administration about U.S. forces withdrawing from Afghanistan to ensure that Afghanistan did not become a safe haven for terrorist operations against the United States. And so one of the major questions here will be, did al-Zawahiri have any support from members of the Taliban government as he was remaining in Kabul? Now, at the same time, this operation comes nearly a year after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. And at the time, you'll recall, Erin, President Biden made very clear that even though U.S. troops were withdrawing from Afghanistan, that the U.S. was going to retain what he called over-the-horizon capability to strike at any terrorist organizations and any individual terrorists who might try and harm the United States. And that appears to be exactly what happened over the weekend as the U.S. was able to conduct a successful drone strike to take out al-Zawahiri. At the same time, we're hearing that there were no civilian casualties in this operation, something that we know President Biden has been mindful of, particularly when you think about last summer when there was that deadly U.S. strike that resulted in several civilian casualties in Afghanistan around the time of that U.S. withdrawal. But we are expecting to hear from President Biden this hour in just a few moments on this operation, how it was conducted, and perhaps he will explain some of the intelligence that led to this drone strike that successfully killed al-Zawahiri, not only al-Qaeda's leader, but also formerly Osama bin Laden's #2 official for years, who helped shape al-Qaeda perhaps more than anyone besides bin Laden.
Jeremy, thank you very much. And as we await the president, I mean, so we wait to see what details he'll give. But obviously, a drone attack comes with significant intelligence on the ground. And what Zawahiri was doing in Kabul, whether safe harbor or visiting, or what role the Taliban played, who's announcing it, there are so many things we simply do not know. I want to bring in now Clarissa Ward, our chief international correspondent, who's reported extensively from inside Afghanistan. Seth Jones, former advisor to the commanding general of U.S. Special Operations Forces in Afghanistan. John Avlon, our senior political analyst, and Leon Panetta. He was CIA director when Osama bin Laden was caught and when Zawahiri became the leader of al-Qaeda. He soon became defense secretary, and I traveled to Afghanistan with him then. Director, Secretary Panetta, let me begin with you. 25 years on the list, $25 million reward, a year after a chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. How significant is this moment?
I think this is a very significant moment because in many ways it bookends with the operation to go after bin Laden and really, I think, undermines al-Qaeda's leadership for a long time to come. We were successful in going after bin Laden. Zawahiri, obviously, as number two, took his place. But the bottom line is that this attack going after Zawahiri has made very clear that al-Qaeda does not have the leadership at this point in time to be able to be a threat to the United States or others.
Clarissa, what about the significance of the location? And again, as I said, we don't know the context yet in the intelligence. Perhaps the president will share a lot more in a few minutes when he begins speaking. But it certainly stands out, not in the border tribal regions. In the capital, in Kabul, is where this drone strike took out Zawahiri.
It's pretty staggering, Erin. I mean, this is an area, Sharipur, which is just really minutes away from a guest house where we were spending a lot of time. It's a place where many Taliban leaders spend a lot of time, have houses. The very real burning question of the moment, I think, becomes whose house was this? Who did it belong to? What was he doing there? How long had he been there? Who knew that he was there, and how was this allowed to happen? Because while we're already seeing the Taliban leadership come out and condemn this drone strike and say that it's a direct contravention of the Doha Agreement, what is actually really in direct contravention of the Doha Agreement was the very idea that once again, al-Qaeda could enjoy any kind of safe haven in Afghanistan. When I was out on the streets, Erin, every day as the Taliban took power, I spoke to many officials, many ordinary Taliban fighters who all went to great lengths to stress that it was not possible that this could happen again. And yet here we are, this hugely seminal, symbolic, pivotal figure in al-Qaeda has now been killed in a drone strike, as you said, not in the hinterland, not in the sort of border areas, but in the very center of Kabul. It raises serious questions about what the Taliban's intentions are going forward as well.
So, Seth, Zawahiri obviously was the leader. He was, though, at this point, 71 years old. But as I showed that video from him last year, very much still, the leader and continuing on his jihad. How much does his death change al-Qaeda's ability to strike or to threaten the U.S.?
Well, Erin, I think the challenge for al-Qaeda at the moment is in Afghanistan. They've been attempting to rebuild their infrastructure, including their external operations capability. But it's going to take some time for them to do it. It's going to take some time to build the training camps that they're starting to build in parts of eastern Afghanistan. The death of al-Zawahiri is certainly a blow. He is and has been since the death of Osama bin Laden the most important al-Qaeda figure, the one that has talked most significantly to the al-Qaeda franchises across the globe, and has been historically, even during the bin Laden years, probably the most influential religious leader, including through some of his texts like Knights Under the Prophet's Banner. So this will be a short-term, possibly a mid-term blow to al-Qaeda. But I think, as everybody has said here, including Clarissa, the fact that this was done in Kabul, and the fact that a recent UN report noted that the number of al-Qaeda fighters has doubled since the Taliban took over in Afghanistan, does have some very serious concerns over the midterm.
Right, right. I mean, that doesn't just go away overnight, despite the significance of this moment. So, John, I briefly showed the video of Zawahiri, talking about the U.S. As broken and defeated. Specifically, he was talking about the chaotic and messy American pullout, Biden's pullout of Afghanistan last year. What is the significance of this strike, a drone strike in the Capitol, in the context of that withdrawal from Afghanistan?
The fact it comes almost 1 year after that, where he was taunting the United States, taunting us about 9/11, taunting the messy withdrawal, saying we were broken and defeated. Well, now he's not only broken and defeated, but dead. And I do think that 21 years after 9/11, it's a reminder that justice delayed is not always justice denied. And that also, as Clarissa and Seth pointed out, and Secretary Panetta, that the Taliban complaining about a violation of the Doha Agreement is absurd, because one of the first key elements of it was that they would not give shelter to al-Qaeda or terrorist organizations. And here clearly they were. And the silver lining is that lie ultimately perhaps ended up to the targeting successfully of Zawahiri after 21 years.
Secretary Panetta, what do you make of the location here, that he was in the capital of Kabul? And again, we don't know the intelligence that led to this. Obviously, a drone strike doesn't happen without intelligence on the ground. I mean, I'm just stating the obvious here. We don't know how all those things tie together, what the sources were. But nonetheless, we do know the location, Secretary.
Well, frankly, it's not much of a surprise. Our concern was that if the Taliban took over Afghanistan, they would again create a safe haven for terrorists. That's what they did before. And that's exactly what they've continued to do. And the result is that it doesn't surprise me that Zawahiri was finding some kind of safe haven in Kabul. The problem is that I do believe that our intelligence officials continued to maintain an intelligence network in Kabul and throughout Afghanistan, because they had a legitimate fear that because of what the Taliban was doing, that terrorism could again spring forth from Afghanistan. And that's why Zawahiri paid the price for that.
So, Clarissa, since you have spent time there, and of course you were there during the chaotic withdrawal, as you know, people were desperately trying to get out at the airport. So many of them, people who had worked and helped the United States. When you think about how this intelligence happened, we're going to hear more from the president. We don't, he's going to speak for several minutes here. So maybe we are going to get some more details about exactly what happened. But it does appear, Clarissa, the Taliban announcing it, right, saying, oh, we confirm. What do you read into that they're quick to say that now?
Well, I think they're trying to get ahead of this, right? They're trying to say, immediately, we're aware of this, we're going to announce it, we're going to say that it was a drone strike. The rumor mill in the background is also going into overdrive, casting aspersions on Pakistan potentially, that they were somehow involved in sort of providing the intelligence, and to really get their narrative straight, and to say that, this can't happen again. They've already said such actions will damage any future available opportunities of cooperation between the U.S. and the Taliban in Afghanistan going forward. The reality is that relationship is severely damaged now, and the Taliban does not have a lot of recourse for how it can really try to repair it. So I think that you're seeing some damage control. I do think it's very interesting that they broke that information. I don't think you're going to hear much more from them in terms of how exactly Zawahiri ended up in Kabul, whose home he was staying in, and it will be very interesting to hear what President Biden says on that topic, if he goes into the specifics of it at all. It's possible that they will continue to hold some of that back for obvious reasons, but also to have more leverage with the Taliban going forward.
Right, and of course, such high interest in that. Seth, you said a couple of things, though, that I think really I want to make sure everyone heard. You talked about camps that have been resurrected in certain parts of Afghanistan, and you talked about a doubling in al-Qaeda recruitment since the Taliban took over. What else should we know about that is currently happening right now in a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, which obviously there has been a haven for terror?
Well, Erin, we also need to remind everyone that the Islamic State, ISIS, Khorasan province continues to operate from Afghanistan, And there are other groups that have been active, the Pakistan Taliban, Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Army of the Righteous, active in Afghanistan. So there are other terrorist groups operating in Afghanistan that have moved across the border, like Zawahiri himself, from Pakistan into Afghanistan since the Taliban's takeover. And I would just add one other thing. Having been involved in a range of these counterterrorism operations, it's certainly one thing to conduct one drone strike against an individual, but if there is a campaign that is required to conduct action against al-Qaeda or other groups, the U.S. is in a pretty tough position to do that right now.
Right, just doesn't have anyone there. John, quickly before we go, because obviously the president is going to be speaking in just a few moments, so we're going to be listening to this live. This is a huge moment for him, right? But obviously he's had some domestic achievements here on the policy side, but this is a very big moment. And Afghanistan isn't something he necessarily ever wanted to have to talk about again. But this is a moment he does want to pound the table on, but he's got to get it right.
He does, and he needs to be obviously clear that this is a victory for America that goes far beyond party or even a particular president. It happened under his watch. It is a victory for the military and the intelligence facilities who got this done. But it is important that he crystallize this as a bookend to an era, the following on from the killing of bin Laden, and some justice finally for the victims of 9/11.
All right, all of you, thank you very much. Please stay with me, though, because as I said, we are standing by for President Biden's address to the nation. We will all be there for that when he speaks live in just a few moments. And China, all this happening as China is threatening the United States in an unprecedented way, warning it won't sit idly by if Speaker Nancy Pelosi visits Taiwan. Tonight, the Biden administration responding. And we are also just hours away from polls opening in 5 crucial states, one of the biggest primaries, Arizona, where a Trump-backed election denier is the leading contender to oversee that state's elections.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, you are looking at live pictures inside the White House. President Biden will be approaching that podium in just a few moments here, and will be speaking live on the death of al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. Multiple sources tell us that Zawahiri was killed over the weekend in a drone strike in Afghanistan, in the capital of Afghanistan, Kabul. As I said, the President of the United States will be walking to that podium in just a few seconds here. In the meantime, I want to bring in Jeremy Diamond. So, Jeremy, obviously, this is a very important moment, and this is going to be a very scripted moment. This is an address to the nation in prime time.
It certainly is, and it is the first time that we have heard directly from President Biden on a counterintelligence operation since last February, when President Biden was able to announce that the U.S. had conducted a successful raid to kill the leader of ISIS in Syria. Tonight, we are expecting President Biden to announce that the U.S. has conducted a successful drone strike to kill al-Qaeda's leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the 71-year-old leader of al-Qaeda, formerly Osama bin Laden's deputy, who perhaps more than anybody else besides Osama bin Laden helped shape al-Qaeda into not only what it is today, but what it was, particularly in the early 2000s when al-Qaeda was at its most potent. We are now, I think it's also important to keep in mind that this is coming nearly a year after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. And at the time, you'll recall, Erin, President Biden talked about the importance of the United States maintaining that over-the-horizon capability to be able to go after terrorists in Afghanistan should they pose a threat to the United States. And that is exactly what appears to have happened here, as we have learned that this drone strike took out Ayman al-Zawahiri, a strike that likely would not have required any U.S. personnel on the ground for it to be conducted. And so tonight is certainly a vindication for President Biden of those capabilities that were questioned at the time when the U.S. was pulling out. These questions were raised of whether or not the U.S. would be able to target any terrorist threats to the United States in Afghanistan without the manpower there. And now here comes the president.
Americans, on Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan, that killed the emir of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. You know, Zawahiri was bin Laden's leader. He was with him the whole time. He was his number 2 man, his deputy at the time the terrorist attack of 9/11. He was deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. One of the most responsible for the attacks that murdered 2,977 people on American soil. For decades, he was the mastermind behind attacks against Americans, including the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000, which killed 17 American sailors and wounded dozens more. He played a key role in the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing 224 and wounding over 4,500 others. He carved a trail of murder and violence against American citizens, American service members, American diplomats, and American interests. And since the United States delivered justice to bin Laden 11 years ago, Zawahiri has been a leader of al-Qaeda, the leader. From hiding, he coordinated al-Qaeda's branches and all around the world, including setting priorities for providing operational guidance that call for and inspired attacks against U.S. targets. He made videos, including in recent weeks, calling for his followers to attack the United States and our allies. Now, justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more. People around the world no longer need to fear the vicious and determined killer. The United States continues to demonstrate our resolve and our capacity to defend the American people against those who seek to do us harm. You know, we make it clear again tonight that no matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out. After relentlessly seeking Zawahiri for years under Presidents Bush, Obama, and Trump, our intelligence community located Zawahiri earlier this year. He had moved to downtown Kabul to reunite with members of his immediate family. After carefully considering the clear and convincing evidence of his location, I authorized a precision strike that would remove him from the battlefield once and for all. This mission was carefully planned, rigorously minimized the risk of harm to other civilians. And 1 week ago, after being advised that the conditions were optimal, I gave the final approval to go get him. And the mission was a success. None of his family members were hurt, and there were no civilian casualties. I'm sharing this news with the American people now, after confirming the mission's total success through the painstaking work of our counterterrorism community and key allies and partners. My administration has kept congressional leaders informed as well. When I ended our military mission in Afghanistan almost a year ago, I made the decision that after 20 years of war, the United States no longer needed thousands of boots on the ground in Afghanistan to protect America from terrorists who seek to do us harm. And I made a promise to the American people that we continue to conduct effective counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan and beyond. We've done just that. In February, our forces conducted a daring mission in Syria that eliminated the emir of ISIS. Last month, we took out another key ISIS leader. Now we have eliminated the emir of al-Qaeda. He will never again allow Afghanistan to become a terrorist safe haven, because he is gone, and we're going to make sure that nothing else happens. You know, it can't be a launching pad against the United States. We're going to see to it that won't happen. This operation is a clear demonstration that we will, we can, and we'll always make good on the solemn pledge. My administration will continue to vigilantly monitor and address threats from al-Qaeda, no matter where they emanate from. As Commander-in-Chief, it is my solemn responsibility to make America safe in a dangerous world. The United States did not seek this war against terror. It came to us, and we answered with the same principles and resolve that have shaped us for generation upon generation. To protect the innocent, defend liberty, and we keep the light of freedom burning, a beacon for the rest of the entire world, because this is a great and defining truth about our nation and our people. We do not break. We never give in. We never back down. Last year on September 11th, I once more paid my respect to Ground Zero in New York City, at that quiet field in Shanksville at the Pentagon, standing in the memorial at Ground Zero, seeing the names of those who died forever etched in bronze is a powerful reminder of the sacred promise we made as a nation. We will never forget. The memorial also bears the quotation from Virgil: "No day shall erase you from the memory of time. No day shall erase you from the memory of time." So we continue to mourn every innocent life that was stolen on 9/11 and honor their memories. To the families who lost fathers and mothers, husbands, wives, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and co-workers on that searing September day, it is my hope that this decisive action will bring one more measure of closure. No day shall erase them from the memory of time. Today and every day, I'm so grateful for the superb patriots who serve the United States intelligence community and counterterrorism communities. They never forget. And those dedicated women and men who tirelessly work every single day to keep our country safe, to prevent future tragedies. It is thanks to their extraordinary persistence and skill that this operation was a success. They've made us all safer. And to those around the world who continue to seek to harm the United States, hear me now. We will always remain vigilant, and we will act, and we will always do what is necessary to ensure the safety and security of Americans at home and around the globe. Today, we remember the lost. We commit ourselves to the safety of the living, and we pledge that we shall never waver from defending our nation and its people. Thank you all, and may God protect our troops and all those who serve in harm's way. We will never give up.
And you just heard the President of the United States speaking about the successful drone strike against Ayman al-Zawahiri, the leader of al-Qaeda in the capital city of Afghanistan, Kabul. He spoke for about 8 minutes there from the White House. Our panel is with me, but I want to go back to the White House and Jeremy Diamond first, because we learned some things there, Jeremy, from the President. He talked about how that the United States was able to ascertain that Zawahiri was in Afghanistan earlier this year in downtown Kabul. And he said that 1 week ago, they were given convincing evidence that they knew exactly where he was and that the timing was right, and he gave the final approval. Those are details, but do you know more of the details about this strike that was conducted when, of course, there are no U.S. forces in Afghanistan?
Yeah, that's right. A senior administration official did brief us with some additional details of how this came together. And this was, as is so often the case with these situations, a painstaking progress of gathering and confirming intelligence and ensuring that it was to the highest possible degree of confidence before President Biden ultimately gave the okay 1 week ago today on July 25th, when the president convened a final meeting, we're told, with his key cabinet members. All of them strongly recommended approval of this targeted mission, we're told, and President Biden gave the okay. But this was a painstaking process over the last year. Initially, we're told, U.S. intelligence officials learned that al-Zawahiri's family had moved to a safe house in Kabul. They then were able to confirm that Zawahiri himself had moved into that safe house as well. Interestingly, U.S. officials say, or the senior administration official says, that Zawahiri did not once, to their knowledge, leave this safe house. But here is where he was ultimately targeted. On the balcony of this safe house is allegedly when this strike took place, according to the senior administration official. And this strike was done in a way that, according to the U.S., no civilian casualties occurred, which is pretty remarkable when you think about the fact that 2 Hellfire missiles, we're told, were fired on this balcony where al-Zawahiri was late on Saturday night Eastern time, and that only he was killed. The strike was done with the intention of ensuring that the structural integrity of the building, where Zawahiri's family presumably was as well, that building would not collapse. And we're told that the president actually examined a model, Erin, of this safe house in the Situation Room during a July 1st meeting. He examined this house. He asked questions about the structural integrity to try and ensure that there would be a minimal risk to any civilians in the area.
Jeremy, thank you very much. All of this new reporting that Jeremy is breaking here. Let's go back to the panel. First, former CIA Director Leon Panetta, when, of course, Osama bin Laden was taken out. Director, what do you take away from what we just heard from the president and some of the details that Jeremy just added here in his reporting? 2 Hellfire missiles taking out Ayman al-Zawahiri while he was on the balcony and that this was the final go-ahead was given basically a week ago. But when you look at the timeline that the president laid out, that Jeremy is giving more detail on, what do you take away from it, Director?
I think the most important thing is that we need to pay tribute to our intelligence and military officials that were involved in this strike. They gathered the right intelligence. They were able to target Zawahiri without any kind of collateral damage. It was a well-planned and well-executed targeting of a terrorist. And just as I said when we got bin Laden, it sends a message to the world that nobody attacks the United States and gets away with it.
Clarissa, you talk about this neighborhood, right? And you've been there, you know what these villas are like. And they said that when Zawahiri went there, the president said he never left, and that he joined his family. He was on the balcony when this happened, and 2 Hellfire missiles, as Jeremy's reporting, took him out. What do you take away from what we just learned, Clarissa?
I mean, I think the main takeaway still for me is trying to get a little bit of a better sense as to who invited Zawahiri to spend time in Kabul, who thought that that was a good idea. It's impossible, obviously, that he was in the Shirpur neighborhood, which is favored and frequented, and many Taliban leaders have villas there, without some kind of an express invitation. And indeed, we just heard from Zawahiri himself on July 13th, I believe, was his last audio message. A UN panel of experts just last week was talking about the fact that he was communicating more often and with a higher level of comfort. And there was this real concern that essentially you were seeing a kind of regrouping, if you will. Now, it appeared that there was no capacity or capability yet for launching transnational attacks. And so perhaps the focus wasn't quite as keenly of the moment. But with Zawahiri now being killed, it does raise real questions going forward about how the U.S. can continue its relationship, to the extent that there is one, with the Taliban, how the Taliban, if they even will try to explain this situation, will indeed explain it, and whether some senior leadership of the Taliban were somehow involved with his presence in the capital, and what that portends for the future. So, it's obviously a significant victory for the U.S., but still a lot of questions going forward about what this means.
And among those questions, Seth, something the president said that stood out to me was sort of his trying to make the argument that even though the U.S. is gone from Afghanistan, look, we were able to do this, okay. But he took it a step further, saying that now that Zawahiri was taken out, we're going to make sure that that never happens again in terms of al-Qaeda being given safe sanctuary. Obviously, Seth, did he go too far with the way he phrased that?
Well, I think that any American official has to be a little bit careful here. I think on the one hand, Secretary Panetta is exactly right. This was an extraordinary example of great intelligence work by U.S. intelligence and military officials, painstakingly tracking Zawahiri and then conducting a precise attack against him. On the other hand, if we're talking about concerns about broader terrorist sanctuary in Afghanistan, the reality is the U.S. doesn't have a base in the region, it doesn't have a partner force on the ground, and it doesn't have really a significant intelligence infrastructure, because most of it left when the U.S. pulled out in August. That does create some hurdles for any kind of a sustained campaign if the U.S. becomes alarmed at growing plotting. And a recent UN Security Council report just out over the last couple of weeks does express growing concern about not just al-Qaeda, but other groups operating from Afghanistan. That's a little bit of the longer-term challenge.
Right. And John, how do you think he handled the moment? Obviously, this was a scripted speech. It's from a teleprompter, about 8 minutes long. They had obviously very carefully scripted it. How did he do?
Look, I think from delivery standpoint, there were moments where he was clear and crisp and said, we will find you and we will take you out. And there are other moments that did not live up to perhaps the gravity of the moment. But those kind of critiques are small compared to the moment objectively for the country. And I just want to bring it back home. The president spoke about how this was in some ways promises kept to the families of the victims of 9/11. And as you know, I worked in City Hall at that time and was across, a couple blocks away when the towers fell, and wearing a bracelet for Terry Hatton, captain of Rescue 1, who died that day, that I keep on my desk and have every day since. I found myself being so emotional at this news, because this is, in some ways, been the shoe that didn't drop, even 10 years after bin Laden, knowing that, or thinking that Zawahiri was still out there. And the fact that the U.S. took him out with a drone strike and took such care to minimize civilian casualties, apparently having none. That's more than Zawahiri or his colleagues did every day of their lives, where they intentionally targeted civilians to kill. And that's what makes this, I think, such a profound moment for the country and for just everyone who lived through 9/11.
Director Panetta, it's amazing what John raises, and the president made clear. Not just no civilians were killed, but no members of Zawahiri's family, that there was such care taken, right? Using the scale model, waiting until that moment he walked out on the balcony. Director, how does this moment feel for you? When you were there as director with the intelligence with Osama bin Laden, you were there the day that he was taken out. And now here we are on this night with Ayman al-Zawahiri finally gone.
Yeah, it's it was a little bit different operation, because we had to send 2 teams of SEALs 150 miles into Pakistan at night to go after bin Laden, which obviously, again, was a tribute to the intelligence and military officials involved. Here, as a drone strike, which is something that we've done in counterterrorism operations a lot, but it does require very good intelligence on the ground, frankly, and as well as other sources of intelligence, to be able to make sure that you have the right target, because that would be a horrendous mistake if you don't have the right target. So having the right intelligence, being able to plan it, doing the hit when he walked out on the balcony is all part of the careful responsibility involved with these drone strikes that makes it a very effective weapon when it comes to going after terrorists.
It is actually, when you think about it, simply incredible. And the questions raised about the intelligence on the ground, still so many big questions that we will find more answers to in the coming days. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. And next, in these evening hours, we are now getting ready for polls tomorrow. 2 Trump-backed election deniers are on the ballot in Arizona's crucial primary. So how is their message playing? And we're going to take you to Kentucky. There's a race against time there to locate those still missing after catastrophic flooding today. Tonight, the midterms now just 99 days away. And tomorrow, voters are heading to the polls in 5 states for primary elections. One of them, Michigan, where a crowded field of candidates includes a man charged in the Capitol attack. And in Arizona, Mark Fincham, a Trump-backed conspiracy theorist, is a leading contender to be Arizona's next Secretary of State. He says he won't concede if he loses. Kyung La is in Arizona, and she joins me now. I mean, Kyung, it's hard to even read that sentence. It's disturbing, but the governor's race has turned into a proxy war between Trump and Pence, with Trump backing Kari Lake, Pence endorsing Karen Taylor Robson. You obviously have been covering this. You've spoken to the contenders. Whose endorsement has more weight?
It's a little hard to tell at this point, and polling here, especially in the governor's race, has shown one over the other, depending on what day and what time these polls are released. So it's very difficult to tell. But what we can say is that when primary voters, these Republican voters, go to the poll tomorrow, we will find out at the results of all of this is, does Trump still have a hold on the Republican Party here in Arizona? Kari Lake has fully embraced Trump's election lie. She has said that if she is governor, if she was governor in 2020, she wouldn't have certified the state's election results. Now contrast that with Karen Taylor Robson, who is taking a half step back, and she has basically been backed by Mike Pence, saying that what she wants to do is that her party no longer looks back at 2020 and instead is looking forward to 2024 and beyond Trump. There's also Blake Masters, who has embraced the Trump lie. The question here, Erin, is what these results will show at the end of the day. There are not just governor and U.S. Senate, but Trump has endorsed an attorney general as well as Secretary of State Mark Fincham, as you mentioned. And these candidates, all of them, have said that they embrace the lie, and many of them have also said, Erin, that they believe that there could be conspiracies in this election, teeing up some of those conspiracies just in case they lose. Erin?
Kyung, thank you very much. Live in Arizona ahead of those polls opening tomorrow. And next, we are live in flood-ravaged Kentucky, which is tonight bracing for more rain as the death toll rises and hundreds are missing.